The first of the jumping Capellan mechs, a Vindicator, landed directly in front of Stephen's Peacekeeper. Maeve's Lancemate let loose with an alpha strike that shook the enemy's battlemech to the core. A flurry of PPCs, a large laser, a plasma rifle, and short-range missiles. Declan winced in sympathy for the Republic pilot as the heat buildup from the attack must have been agonizing. Stephen's PPCs carved large divots out of the Vindicator, and then the laser sliced an ugly wheal across the mech's ribs. The plasma rifle did the most damage, however, imparting further heat to its target, making the Capellan Mechwarrior more hesitant to use their energy weapons to strike back, worried it would cause the mech's fusion engine to shut down from overheating. Paid in Blood, The Highlander Covenant, Book 2, page 156 through 157, by Michael Ciaravella. If there's a constant across human civilizations, it's innovation. From the discovery of fire, tools, agriculture, all the way to genetic engineering and nanotechnology, our brains are constantly seeking to innovate. With the weapons of the 31st and 32nd centuries, we see this in the constantly shifting weapons of war. From PPCs, missiles, lasers, gigantic claws, the scientists of the inner sphere and clans are constantly looking to develop an advantage. Today, we look at one of those, plasma weaponry, which has taken several different forms in both clan and inner sphere military units across these centuries. The story of plasma weaponry begins in a place we don't usually get to visit first in our discussion of really any BattleTech technology, the lowly foot soldier. The Capellan military ended up being the first to see plasma weaponry in action, thankfully on the giving end and not receiving. The process of flash heating chunks of dense plastic and resin foam into projectiles of burning white-hot death must have taken their breath away on first use. Of course, those on the receiving end of such projectiles were likely even more surprised for the entirety of the very few warm seconds they had left to live. The advantages granted by what can be described as a supercharged projectile napalm device were immediately obvious when used as an infantry support weapon, and only later scaled up for vehicles and eventually battlemechs. In my personal headcanon, I see the plasma shot as a flaming marshmallow fired at great speed at some hapless target. In a lecture to the Federated Youth Academic Vacation Camp at the New Avalon Institute of Science in 3144, Dr. Dorona Suzuki described the weapon that the new Davion Mechwarriors would quickly learn to fear. The plasma rifle, a bit of a misnomer since its barrel lacks any actual rifling, combines centuries of weapons development into what is, in a sense, a laser cannon inside a mass accelerator controlled by a PPC. A plasma rifle round is often called a plastic foam cartridge, but each projectile is actually composed of a variety of exotic materials, including certain plastic resins arranged in precise layers, designed to absorb a specially tuned laser beam's energy and convert it into plasma at exactly the right moment in its trajectory. Plasma, Plasma, and More Plasma, Shrapnel No. 6, by Wenju Lao. Dr. Suzuki goes on to explain that the key to success for plasma weaponry was not in rendering the fired projectile into plasma, but figuring out when and where for that shift in state to occur. Too early and the projectile would expend its energy before it hit its target. Too late and it may bounce off the target's armor. Only with the mixture of proper range finding, stabilization, and weapon motion control were the Capellan engineers able to achieve a targeting solution algorithm that could be generated before each shot. The standard inner sphere plasma rifle weighs 6 tons, generates 10 heat, and does 10 damage to its target. Because of the considerable thermal heat transfer of the weapon, it can add additional damage or generate additional heat on target depending upon what that target is. For infantry, battle armor, protomechs, and vehicles, there's an additional 2d6 damage generated on top of the original 10. For mechs, aerospace fighters, dropships, and jump ships, 1d6 worth of heat is generated on the target. This makes the plasma rifle an incredible weapon against infantry and vehicles, and one that can be a game changer between mechs. There are lots of mech builds out there, especially fan-generated ones, that operate on the razor's edge concerning heat generation and heat sinks. Adding up to 6 heat to a mech that wasn't expecting it could make a significant impact and throw a monkey wrench into future plans. The range on the plasma rifle is respectable, with no minimum and a long range of 11 to 15, which puts it solidly in the mid-range category of weapons where most BattleTech games are fought. The cost of plasma rifles for the user is their heat generation and the inherent limitation of having ammunition, though ammo is inert and isn't subject to ammunition explosions. A single ton will provide 10 shots, which isn't amazing, but 2 tons will be enough to get you through any battle on the tabletop. In 3068, when the Capellans launched Operation Thunderstrike, the first vehicle-sized plasma weapons were employed to push back against House Davion forces that had seized a significant chunk of Capellan space. They were so effective and unexpected that it contributed to Davion losses across the front lines. From there, most who heard of the weapon's existence were eager to get their hands on it. Even the clans, who would normally balk at the suggestion that the Inner Sphere had anything to offer, were interested. It definitely wasn't the 3050s anymore. The Firestarter raised its right arm, eager to gain a small measure of revenge, but the remaining battle armor recovered too quickly and fired off their plasma rifles, wreathing the mech in flames. Bianca couldn't help but watch helplessly as the Firestarter became a towering inferno. The sudden heat increase quickly overwhelmed the light mech's heat sinks, causing the Firestarter to lock in place and then slump forward as the immense heat from the burning plasma shut down its fusion engine. As she watched, the mimetic armor of the battle armor sent ripples across the snowy landscape as they circled their prey. A pair of Yinglongs leapt onto the burning Firestarter, heedless of the heat, and tore at the cockpit like vicious animals. Grey Watch Protocol, The Highlander Covenant, Book 1, page 147, by Michael Ciarvella. Now, while the clans didn't officially have access to the Inner Sphere version of the plasma rifle for their mechs until much later in the timeline when the tech gets muddled, the Diamond Sharks did manage to procure a few examples and fashioned their own weaponized version of the plasma weapon technology in 3069. The plasma cannon is significantly different from the plasma rifle, weighing in at only 3 tons, generating 7 heat, and doing no direct damage to battle mechs or their heat-sinked foes. The plasma cannon's primary draw is adding 2d6 heat to a target mech on a successful hit. 12 heat could absolutely ruin many mechs' subsequent turns. The plasma cannon still requires ammo at 10 shots per ton, which might be the only numerical similarity with the Inner Sphere cousin. Its range is noticeably better than the plasma rifles at 318 in a long-range bracket. The in-universe explanation for the differences between the weapons was a larger round that created a much bigger spread of heat across an armored target's surface, increasing the heat but reducing the concentrated kinetic impact. I don't know about you, but I'm quite fond of the fact that the clan version of the plasma weapon isn't just Inner Sphere but better. I can see a use for either weapon in various situations and battles, and that's a really good and healthy thing for the game. Kudos to the person who came up with this idea. Total benefits package, support and counseling. I believe it would be prudent to ensure our staff has access to the appropriate level of mental health counseling and support. My encounter with the crew and techs for this competitor's Pike, the plasma cannon variant, was something I will never forget. They sat in a circle around a bar table, staring with dead eyes as they took bets on who could hold their hand over a pocket soldering torch the longest. As far as I'm concerned, they all won. The smell was unforgettable. I imagine witnessing firsthand the horrors that can be unleashed on an infantry platoon with the weapons you maintain, which can tend to cause issues. Tech Aztec Compensation Review, December 3151. We'll schedule it for you. Combined Arms, Techs, and Aztecs. Shrapnel number 15 by Ed Stevens. To help advocate for the use of plasma weaponry in your next game of BattleTech, I've picked out 4 mechs that I think are good representations of the applied technology. While not exhaustive of all the variants out there that carry plasma, of course, this is a good start. The first is the Gun, a Capellan light omnimech weighing in at just 20 tons. Relatively slow-moving with a top speed of just 86 kilometers per hour, the savings from the Endosteel, the XL gyro, and a smaller engine was devoted to maximizing pod space on the mech. A full 50% of the total weight of the machine was preserved for pod space. Series medals on Capella have been producing the Gun for distribution across Capellan space, including shipments to Makaran's armored cavalry. Largely used as a garrison and light support mech for the Capellan armed forces, it's also been seen serving in Magistracy of Canopus units thanks to the trade agreements made between the two interstellar nations. The goon's primary weapons configuration featured a plasma rifle in the mech's right arm, and it was fed by 2 tons of ammunition stored in the right torso. Backing up the big rifle are a pair of ER medium lasers placed into the left torso. The range profiles for the 2 weapons are close, and the plasma rifle is able to reach out just a little bit further. The goon's 10 double heat sinks are adequate for the task, leaving the mech only +2 into the red if firing everything while on the run. Overall, the goon is a solid platform for the plasma rifle. It has 3.5 tons of armor, which makes it a little fragile, but it's a 20-ton mech after all, so Operation Sneaky Sneak is the name of the game. Our next plasma-wielding mech is the 80-ton Warhammer 2C8, which first debuted in 3079 and was true to form for the Warhammer 2C with a collection of nasty and powerful weaponry. It also happens to end up being one of the most common variants for the Warhammer 2C across the Inner Sphere. It saw service in clan tumens, house militaries, and even among wealthier mercenary units. Its primary weaponry consisted of a pair of large heavy lasers split between the arms which could hammer a target out to mid-range with 16 damage hits. They were backed up by 2 ER medium lasers split between the side torsos, a Streak SRM-6 located in the right torso, and 2 plasma cannons split between the arms. Each of the plasma cannons was fed by just a single ton of ammunition, but it provided the Warhammer with a solid anti-infantry weapon as well as a way to keep armored heat-sinked targets from being able to unleash their full weapons payloads. The 2C8's 19 double heatsinks are not capable of covering a full alpha strike. In fact, it's not even close. Those large heavy lasers pumping out 18 heat apiece make riding the heat curve an exercise in futility. Though at least if you employ the plasma cannons, both you and your opponent can overheat together, just as the Founding Fathers intended. Our next mech came to us from the noble Rosselhog Dominion in 3079. The Karoo is a 65-ton Omnimech which has 30 tons of pod space, 580 movement, and 12 built-in double heat sinks. Oh, and it's protected by 10.5 tons of ferrofibrous armor. Seen as a unifying project between the former Ghost Bears and the people of the Rosselhog region, Odin Manufacturing did their best to implement clan technology into their production lines. Reports suggest that it wasn't a flawless execution, however the Karoo is a functional and dangerous Omnimech. Its primary configuration carried an ER PPC and an ER medium laser in its left arm, and in the right it was equipped with a plasma cannon and a retractable blade for close-range conflict resolution. An ECM suite in the right torso seeds some chaos on the battlefield, and the 14 tons of improved jump jets push the Karoo Prime's movement profile up to 587, which makes this a very agile bear. The plasma cannon definitely plays a backup role on the Karoo Prime, but that's really expected when dealing with a cannon over the rifle. Still, it's nice to have the option to hit a target with it on the way in to slice it up with that -2 to hit retractable blade for 7 damage. The Karoo is solid, and it may be getting a video at some point next year. We'll see. Our last plasma-wielding monster of the day is one of my favorite Dark Age era battle mechs. The 40-ton battle mech called the Calliope has been featured before on this channel, but I'm just going to keep talking about it until I'm forced to stop. First hitting the scene in 3127, the Calliope was a creation of Majesty Metals and manufacturing on Dunedinshire within the realm of the Magistracy of Canopus. Just as an aside, that took me 12 attempts to say that sentence correctly. Who is writing these scripts? Sheesh. The Calliope was envisioned as a reliable and flexible garrison mech which could be distributed across planets and settlements that could keep its systems functioning with very little specialized know-how or technology. With a top speed of 86 km per hour, no jump jets, and 7 tons of ferrofibrous armor, the Calliope was less than agile, but instead focused on decent armor coverage and its weaponry. It also sported a compact gyro to slightly boost its durability. The mech's 2 weapon systems were a plasma rifle which replaced the lower right arm and hand of the mech, and a multi-missile launcher 9 rack installed into the left torso. The immediate concern for such a design was the reliance upon ammunition, though 20 shots with the plasma rifle would prove more than enough for most situations. With 2 tons dedicated to the MML-9 launcher, it's still more than 20 shots no matter how you decide to split it up with SRMs or LRMs. The Calliope's 10 double heat sinks are great for general use, as the total possible heat it can generate without environmental outside influence is 17. Easy to maintain, able to pack a punch at all ranges, and just an overall quality producer, the Calliope is a machine worthy of this list. So why do we love plasma weaponry? They are a category of weapons which adds a bit of variability in what can sometimes feel like a mundane battlefield experience. In my never-ending battle against the idea of min-maxing everything to heck and back, the ability to apply unexpected heat to a target mech, be it through plasma or even the tried and true flamers or inferno rounds, can be quite fun. Who doesn't enjoy throwing a wrench into an opponent's well-laid plans? Creating an additional opportunity to apply heat to a target mech emphasizes strategy within the tabletop game. Choosing which one of your mechs fires first can matter a whole lot more if you're forcing your opponent to consider the possibility that they might be hit with 1d6 or 2d6 heat in addition to whatever they generate willingly that turn. It adds some depth to the game, and I really appreciate that. Have you tried out plasma weaponry in your tabletop games? Do you have a favorite mech variant that wields a plasma weapon? Have you accepted plasma as a way of life? Please let me know in the comments and we'll keep the discussion going. Thank you as always for coming by as we talked BattleTech. Thank you to those from the MechFrog Discord who shared their images of their favorite painted mechs. If you enjoyed the video and feel it's worthy, don't forget the thumbs up button, and even hitting subscribe will make it that much more likely you'll see my nonsense in the future. For those who have taken the extra step already to become channel members or supported on KoFi, thank you. Without you, none of this would be possible. Until we meet again, please take care of yourself and your loved ones by making this world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.